So I thought it was about time we take a look at another top 5 list, and this time it is going to be the top 5 free player classes that are currently available. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and of course leave the video with a like. So for this, I am literally going to put in 5 of my favourite free player classes. So this will totally be my opinion, and yes, it will probably be ever so slightly biased, but the fact is these 5 classes I'm going to show you are, if you haven't got them, you've got to, because they are generally, in my opinion, the best at what they do. As with all these kind of videos, there's always you guys out there that will have a different mindset and opinion to me, and that is totally fine. Examples of classes banned from this list, we've got things like Martial Roglins, Shadow Walker, Legion Revenant, and Light Caster, so please do not cry when those ones don't turn up at any point in the next couple of minutes. Now, a couple of those classes were obvious as to why they can't be included, but things like Legion Revenant, you do actually have to join the Legion, believe it or not, even though the quests themselves are essentially free player, but 1,200 adventure coins isn't everyone's cup of tea, and that's a similar story, of course, for getting Lightcaster. Anyway, let's crack on and get into the list. So at number 5, we have got Blood/Scarlett Sorceress, and many of you are probably thinking, what? Why? There are so many better farming classes out there. Well, I argue that point. Scarlett Sorceress in particular can achieve really high DPS. For those of you who don't know, you can get it from Join Tower of Mirrors, dropped by Scarlett, and you will get the Blood Sorceress, which you can change into Scarlet when you reach level 50. Blood Sorceress is a great class for players starting out in the game, and I'd recommend going and getting that as one of the first ones you do. As far as farming goes, I was managing to crit fairly consistently between 4 and 11k. I don't know how I hit the 11k, but it did happen. The main flaw with this class for me is the fact that its cooldowns are not ideal, and as far as soloing bosses goes, it's pretty non-existent. Moving on to number 4, the Age of Stone is not yet over, and this was always going to make this list for me because I stuck by this class for at least 5 years. However, the time does move on, but if you don't have it, you need to grab it because it is a great soloer, it's a great support class, and you know what? It's pretty good in PvP, would you believe? I've defeated many a person with StoneCrusher. A real good perk of this class is that it is not very difficult to use. I've always used the combination 3-4-2-5. That's worked for me. I've achieved DPS well over 10k. It's quite easy to do. It's got a good damage over time with it as well, that against high health bosses, it does build up, and I have got that to around 3,000 and above. So that shows what it is capable of. The class will keep you alive. It has got a nice heal with it as well. Other than your sort of Nulgath bosses, which will just one hit you, you will survive pretty much any boss in the game, and you will solo it with relative ease. But if I was to pick a 4 of this class, I would personally say that if you are going to solo something, it will take slightly longer than other classes that are available on the market. But as far as free player ones go, it for me really is a top tier class, and make sure you do go grab it from Join Geyser. At number 3, we have got Blazebinder. So this is where controversy is probably going to kick in a little bit, but do listen while I explain my reasoning behind this, and there are a couple other classes we'll come on to in just a second that also fit into this number 3 spot. Anyway, Blazebinder. It's free. You can go farm it, available in a merge shop, nice and straightforward as far as that bit goes. This class is again a farming one, and I would not really use it for bosses. It can solo stuff, it will keep you alive, it has got a super strong heal ability attached to number 4, and it does do a fair amount of damage over time. One of the main perks of this one is the fact that the abilities do have quite low cooldowns, in particular your second one, which is, as we said earlier, something that Scarlett Sorceress simply does not have, and that is a common thing with many farming classes, that you will find that the cooldowns are not particularly ideal. The DPS on this class, however, has fairly recently been nerfed, but don't let that put you off, because you've got to remember that this one, with its damage over time and its fairly consistent hits, plus your 5th ability, you will get through farm monsters really quite quickly. And due to its relatively quick cooldowns, its heal and damage over time, it does mean this one isn't too bad in PvP either, and I have used it a fair few times, and I would say it is a pretty successful class when it comes to that. Now, I did say there were a couple other ones that did hit this number 3 spot. Dragon of Time and Shadow Scythe General. These are also both great farming classes with relatively good DPS attached to them, but for me, I just don't like them. That's just my honest truth. I just do not like those two classes, but you guys may prefer them. There's things like Vampire Lord class, for example, which could easily match and beat Scarlett Sorceress from earlier in certain aspects. but it's just one of those ones that I find if I get it, it just goes into the bank, and that is where all these classes have stayed. Another honourable mention would be something like Arch Paladin. Again, stupidly high DPS, and this one is also very good at soloing bosses, but it's just not for me. So at number 2 we have got Yami No Ronin, a class that I have still yet to get, but is definitely one of the top tier ones in the game. You can play it defensively or offensively depending on however you prefer. It has got a stupidly high dodge chance. You can actually get it, I believe, above like 100%, which would therefore mean you take no damage, which is why you see so many people using it against Nulgat. The class itself can actually get really high DPS when you change up your playing style with it, which again is one of the reasons it's such a great soloer. Its farming is, well, non-existent, so don't even bother trying to make it into a farming class because that'd be totally, utterly pointless. But PvP, again, it is really good at PvP, mainly due to the fact that you can end up dodging so many of your opponent's attacks. However, it does go without saying that, as with any of these top tier classes, you will inevitably have to put in quite a few hours of grinding if you want to get your hands on it, and that is made 10 times worse if you are a free player, because whilst it is a free player class and you can go along and get it, there are some shortcut quests to make your life a lot easier. Otherwise, you're going to be spending one heck of a lot of time in the PvP arena, especially for the first section of the quests. But now it's time to move on to my top spot, and that was always going to go to Void Highlord. This is my favourite class in the game, hands down. I know some people say Legion Revenant, and the community is actually pretty split on this. I've done many a poll on it, but for me, Void Highlord, mainly because I'm a big Nulgat fan, is my favourite class. Void Highlord for me is the best soloing class in the game. When battling pretty much any boss, with the exception of people such as J6 and Nulgath, you will never die with this class. It is super self-sustaining, it's really high DPS, and you will just keep on plodding along. The only downside, of course, is your second and fourth ability to use your own health. So if you're not watching out, you will inevitably just kill yourself. In the background, you can see me, I'm literally just randomly hitting the abilities here, so do take that with a pinch of salt. You will, when you do the combinations properly, hit that far higher, far more consistently, but you can see very nice heal over time as well going on. For me, this is the ultimate PvP class. You can literally one-hit your enemy as soon as they spawn, which is incredibly irritating when someone does it to you, and I'd say the majority of the time you do load PvP up, you will find most people are using Void Highlord. DPS really is second to none to the calendar classes, but everyone knows that. However, those of course are pay to win, so we totally ignore those for this list. This class could potentially get away with farming just on the basis of how quickly you can get through enemies, but again, it's not really ideal for that. And finally, to round off, for me, as I said earlier, Void Highlord is my favourite class in the game. If I had a choice between Legion Revenant and Void Highlord, honestly, I would pick Void Highlord. The reason being, Legion Revenant, with its being more of a farmer support class, it's not really my cup of tea. I know it can solo things as well, but it just, the amount of time you have to put in to get that class, I feel with a few other classes, such as StoneCrusher, Blazebinder, you pretty much have it all rounded up. Granted, not as good, but it will do the job, and against the majority of monsters in this game, that is absolutely fine. So guys, thank you all very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like, and of course subscribe. I'll be back very soon. I'll probably go over a lot more top 10s and sort of review ones I've done previously in the past. But until then, have a lovely day, and I'll catch you all again incredibly soon.